Welcome back to Squawk. We got a news alert this morning on Southwest Airlines, and it's a bit of a doozy. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the government has a report now set to say that the company has failed to prioritize safety, and the FAA hasn't done enough about it. The Journal reviewed the Transportation Department report, which will soon be released. It says Southwest pilots flew more than 17 million passengers on planes with unconfirmed maintenance records over a period of about 2 years. The report also says Southwest smashed both wingtips of a jet on a runway last year while repeatedly trying to land in gale force winds. The Transportation Department will also call out the FAA as part of all of this, characterizing its oversight of Southwest as lax and ineffective and inconsistent. A Southwest spokesman says the company reviewed the draft of that report, strongly disagrees with what she calls unsubstantiated references to Southwest safety culture. For reaction to all of this, want to turn to a pilot who captained 737s for American Airlines, including the MAX. Dennis Tajer is here, a spokesman for the Allied Pilots Association. He has over 30 years of flight experience. I want to talk to you about this, the coronavirus, the 737 MAX, and our conversation about Boeing with the CEO, the new CEO of that company. But I want to start with Southwest here. You read this report and you think what?
Well, we haven't read the report. Obviously, we've covered some of the media that's covered it. Right. It's very concerning, but what it focuses on is oversight and safety culture. And ironically, that's what we were talking about with the Boeing MAX situation. So it's very concerning to us, and we're always looking at that. And so we'll look at this report and gather the details. And like all things, even when there is very dark news, as this may appear to be, we know we can learn from it. So that's where we're going to take this.
Do you feel that the different airlines actually have genuinely different safety records? Or not safety records, but safety cultures?
Well, the airlines may have different energy behind their safety culture. Safety culture is very dynamic. It's fluid. But as far as the professional pilots go, we have but one safety culture. It's not measured in one airplane being safer than the other. It's either safe or it isn't. That means it either flies or it doesn't. So it's pretty binary for us.
But the idea that 17 million people were passengers aboard planes that did not have confirmed passing some of these safety the safety programs, does that not concern you? And how could that happen? Because I would assume that you tell me as a pilot, when you get on a plane, you go through a whole series of processes and also check off a whole series of documents and sign them, no?
That is correct. And while that bite that you just repeated, there's so many details and questions we have behind that. So we're just going to wait till the report comes out, and I'm certain we're going to learn from that and find out what happened there. Sure, it's not our airline at American, but our ears are perked very high because systemic issues like that can occur at any airline.
Hey, Dennis, do you think we are entering a situation where you are going to see more regulatory oversight, just given the problems with the 737 MAX and the criticism about the coziness between the FAA and Boeing prior to some of the things that they've been doing recently?
Absolutely. That is the energy of the day, and it should be the energy for us going forward. The FAA relationship with carriers, even at American, that was challenged because it was too cozy, and various staff were moved around as a result. So it's a constant, it's not a battle, it's actually a constant calling we have to ensure that. It's the environment we have in the cockpit where we call each other out, we cross-check each other, and friendships don't matter in that scenario. The only friendship we have is to the safety margin. So, coming to the cockpit, you might learn how safety culture works, because the consequences of not executing that properly are quite dire.
Separately, we spoke to Dave Calhoun yesterday on this broadcast about the 737 MAX, and want to show you what he had to say about that plane's return to service.
We believe this airplane is safer than the safest airplane flying today. Every next airplane has to be that way. It has to be that way for Boeing. It has to be that way for our competitors. So what we call it, trying to relabel it, trying to merchandise that, no. This plane will recover with a flying public when airplane pilots step on it, fly it, like it. And by the way, based on all the test flights we've had to date, which are many, they do. So as all those pilots return, so will passengers.
What do you make of that? Is this plane safer than any other plane that's in the sky?
No, well, we don't make an incremental measure on whether an airplane is safer than another. No matter the manufacturer of the aircraft model, it's either safe or it isn't, and that means the airplane is either going to go or it isn't. So I do understand and appreciate the comments of Mr. Calhoun about the dependency on pilots. We're the last line of defense for our passengers, and we take that seriously. So we're going to go from there. But I do want to mention, he had said that the pilots have experienced this aircraft, and do they like it? Yeah, they do. Well, we're going to reserve that comment. We like what we're seeing so far, but I think his exuberance over that is a little premature. When we get all the information, the tab information, the 1302, the JOAB, which is happening as we speak, going forward, then we'll render our decision. That's how we operate in a cockpit.
When do you think you'll be able to come on our air and give us a real assessment then of this plane and how your pilots are feeling about it?
Oh, when we see it. We've seen the training modules for the simulator, the initial areas that Boeing wants to cover, and
right.
We appreciate them coming in quick, but we have a lot of questions about that as well. I want to make sure that it's just not a drive-by simulator session, that it's full and robust.
We got to run, but Becky did push Dave Calhoun very well yesterday on this issue of automation, and you just mentioned it. You know, 20 years from now, do you think that there's going to be pilots in the plane? 2, 3, just 1? What do you think really happens?
Well, the talk about automation, Becky was right. There wasn't a whole lot of clarity on that. But the bottom line is automation is an additive to the safety margin, is not a replacement for pilot experience and training. And was very concerned when Mr. Calhoun brought up inexperienced pilots when talking about the MCAS system.
Me too.
That is not something that we're going to accept. That MCAS was poorly designed, and it was the automation system that contributed to these crashes.
Right.
That's the end of that story.
It was the pilots not turning off the automation
right.
that was the problem, but it was the automation that began the problem.
Yes, ma'am.